At 2:00 a.m., the city of Caracas lay wrapped beneath a thick blanket of Caribbean humidity, unaware that the strategic balance around it was already shifting. From any balcony overlooking the capital, the sky appeared empty and indifferent, broken only by slow-moving clouds and the faint scatter of distant stars. Nothing in the darkness suggested urgency. Nothing warned that the calm overhead had already expired. What could not be seen, however, was unfolding inside the electromagnetic spectrum. Within that invisible layer, a digital war was already in motion. Deep inside the command trailers of Russian-made S-300VM air defense batteries, radar operators worked in a state of misplaced confidence. Their calm was not accidental. It had been reinforced for years by briefings, foreign advisors, and a doctrine that promised protection through technology. They believed they were shielded by an iron dome, a system advertised as capable of tracking objects as small as a golf ball from more than 100 miles away. In their assessment, no aircraft missile or intrusion could reach Caracas without being detected, classified, and destroyed well beyond the city limits. That confidence extended to political assumptions as well. The operators were convinced the Americans would never cross the border so openly, so decisively. In their minds, deterrence still existed, but those assumptions were anchored to a reality that no longer applied. High above the cloud layer, beyond the reach of aging radar logic and outdated threat libraries, the air was already occupied by ghosts. U.S. Navy EA-18G Growlers, launched from the deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford, were flooding the frequency bands with carefully engineered interference. This was not crude jamming designed to trip alarms or announce presence. It was a deliberate digital fog, layered and adaptive, meant to blind without provoking panic. The defenders heard nothing, saw nothing. The silence was intentional. The wolves never announced themselves. At 2:01 a.m., the sky over Caracas appeared to tear open. Not with the familiar roar of jet engines, but with a sharp, rhythmic ripping sound like heavy canvas being pulled apart under force. A fraction of a second later, the ground responded. Multiple precision strikes landed simultaneously, sending shockwaves through the valley. The Generalissimo Francisco de Miranda Air Base, positioned at the heart of La Carlota, was neutralized in a sequence of blinding flashes that turned night into white light. The S-300 batteries, once presented as the cornerstone of national defense, never fired a single interceptor. Before radar operators could even register a valid contact on their flickering screens, AGM-88G advanced anti-radiation missiles had already locked onto their active emitters. The missiles followed the radar beams back to their source with mechanical indifference. Screens went dark an instant before the command trailers ceased to exist. Within 20 minutes, what had been promoted as the most sophisticated air defense network in South America was reduced to scorched metal and silent wreckage. This was not a conventional air raid meant to level buildings or terrorize civilians. It was a precision door-kicking operation calculated to remove the locks before anyone inside understood the door was already open. And as the air defenses collapsed, the focus of the operation shifted. The sky was no longer the objective. Attention moved inward toward the center of gravity itself, toward the heart of the capital where decisions were made and illusions of control were about to be tested. While F-35C Lightning II fighters held absolute dominance over the airspace, the real objective of the night unfolded much lower, roughly 50 feet above the jungle canopy and the rooftops of the city. This was the domain of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, better known as the Night Stalkers. Their MH-60M Black Hawks and MH-47G Chinooks moved through narrow urban corridors with a level of discipline that bordered on unnatural rotors, tuned profiles, minimized sound signatures reduced to the edge of perception. This was not speed for spectacle. It was precision for inevitability. The target was never a barracks or a fuel depot. It was a set of coordinates tied directly to the regime's private living space. For years, multiple intelligence agencies had mapped the daily patterns, movements, and security routines of Nicolás Maduro. Safe houses were identified, fallback locations confirmed, and subterranean shelters beneath presidential compounds quietly catalogued. On this night, there was no uncertainty. U.S. planners knew exactly where he was resting, and more importantly, how long it would take to reach him. The men descending from those helicopters were not conventional infantry. They were Tier 1 operators from Delta Force trained to apply violence with clinical restraint. As they fast-roped into courtyards and breached reinforced entrances, resistance appeared quickly, but collapsed just as fast. Guards reacted, not defended. Fire was returned, but it lacked coordination, leadership, and any real chance of altering the outcome. This was not a battle. It was an extraction under pressure. Across central Caracas, the psychological shockwave arrived almost simultaneously. The city's power grid flickered, then failed completely, dropping millions into darkness. The orange glow reflecting off high-rise glass was not dawn. It was secondary fires burning at military depots on the outskirts, visible reminders that something irreversible was already underway. In the absence of light, rumors moved faster than aircraft ever could. Whispers of invasion, internal collapse, and civil war filled the streets as civilians tried to understand what they were witnessing. On military radio frequencies, confusion turned into desperation. Commanders shouted for instructions and reinforcements that never came. Requests went unanswered. Demands for the Air Force to respond echoed repeatedly, followed by frantic calls asking where the Su-30 Mk2 flankers were, the aircraft meant to symbolize national strength and deterrence. There was silence because those jets never left the ground. Runways had been cratered. Hangars collapsed under the weight of precision-guided munitions. The U.S. Navy had erased their participation in the conflict before pilots could even reach their cockpits. It was a textbook demonstration of modern doctrine. You do not fight enemy aircraft in the sky if you can delete their ability to take off from the ground. Control the launch points, and the air battle ends before it begins. As the operational picture settled, global attention froze on a single confirmation moving through official channels. What followed was not a leaked video or a shaky recording, but a formal statement from the United States government that stunned observers worldwide. The announcement was clear. Nicolás Maduro and his wife Celia Flores had been successfully captured and removed from the country. This was not an assassination attempt. It was a physical seizure designed to place them before a court of law. In a move that defied traditional expectations, the United States did not rely on distance or standoff firepower alone. It reached into the most heavily fortified location in the country and extracted the head of state directly from his residence. Before the dust had settled on the destroyed S-300 sites, Maduro was already en route toward international waters. Indicted, arrested, and removed from the board in a single night, the operation closed with the kind of efficiency that leaves no room for reinterpretation. This was not symbolism. It was execution of intent. The regime did not collapse because its entire military was defeated in a drawn-out war. It fell because its central figure was suddenly and decisively removed from the equation. The result was a clean checkmate executed in less than 4 hours. To understand how an operation of this scale succeeded so quickly, you have to look beyond explosions and headlines and examine the mechanics of modern military dominance. The answer comes down to 3 interlocking pillars: intelligence, stealth, and overwhelming force. Intelligence was the foundation of the entire operation. the United States military did not guess where radar batteries were positioned or hope that defenses would fail under pressure. Every critical node had been mapped with absolute certainty. For months leading up to the operation, drones and surveillance aircraft continuously documented the electronic signature of every Venezuelan air defense asset. Exact radar frequencies were cataloged. Guard rotation cycles were timed down to the minute. Even a specific technical flaw in the guidance radar had been identified, one that rendered the system blind when exposed to a precise form of electronic interference. By the time the operation began, the defenders' own sensors had already been turned against them. What was meant to provide awareness became a liability. The stealth component of the operation was embodied by the F-35C, which functioned less like a traditional fighter and more like a flying command node. These aircraft were networked into a single combat system, sharing targeting data instantly. Every pilot and every naval asset involved saw the battle space not as isolated points, but as a synchronized four-dimensional picture unfolding in real time. While Venezuelan operators attempted to fight a conventional defensive battle, the U.S. Navy was operating on an entirely different technological plane. This mismatch made meaningful resistance impossible. Beyond the aircraft and weapons, the event quietly redefined the boundaries of power in the modern era, especially for those who assume that rank distance or hardened infrastructure still guarantees safety. The successful capture of a sitting head of state sent a blunt message to every authoritarian leader watching from behind reinforced walls. Bunkers, advanced air defense networks, and national borders no longer offer the sanctuary they once did. The raid demonstrated a level of global reach that remains unique to the United States military. The ability to insert forces, secure a high-value target, and disappear back into the night, while an entire national military remains frozen under air dominance. As the sun rose over Caracas on the 3rd of January, the reality of a new era became impossible to ignore. The streets were not filled with armored columns or occupying troops. They were filled with silence. A tense, confused stillness as people slowly understood that the regime had ended not with a climactic battle, but with a single helicopter flight. The military, suddenly leaderless and without clear direction, chose to stay inside its barracks. Rather than confront an enemy it could neither see nor challenge. The resulting power vacuum formed instantly, and as the USS Gerald R. Ford turned back into the wind to prepare for follow-on operations, one fact was already clear. The primary objective of the mission had been achieved cleanly, decisively, and on American terms. This operation, known by some as Operation Southern Spear, will almost certainly be dissected in war colleges and military history programs for decades to come. It reinforces a hard truth of the 21st century. The power of a nation is no longer measured by how many tanks it fields or how many missiles it parades, but by how quickly its systems can be blinded, silenced, and rendered irrelevant. What this operation exposed was the vulnerability of even the most highly advertised foreign defense systems when confronted with integrated electronic warfare and stealth platforms working as a single organism. On paper, those systems were formidable. In practice, they proved porous. The removal of the national leadership closed a long and turbulent chapter for the country, but it also marked the opening of a new global reality, one where the boundary between diplomatic pressure and direct military action has effectively vanished. The rules of engagement have shifted. The world is now forced to confront the implications of a decapitation strike capable of reshaping a nation in less time than a single night's sleep. That reality raises uncomfortable questions. Was this the correct path toward regional stability? Or does such an action risk unleashing forces that cannot be fully controlled? If you carried the responsibility of Commander-in-Chief, would you have authorized a mission with this level of risk and consequence? Or would the potential for international backlash and civilian impact have outweighed the strategic gain? As Venezuela moves toward rebuilding or risks fragmenting under the weight of uncertainty, the global community must decide how it understands this new era of precision power. This was not a campaign of occupation or prolonged warfare. It was a demonstration of reach, speed, and control. So the question remains: was this surgical decapitation strike a necessary step to restore regional order, or is it a dangerous precedent that places every world leader within the crosshairs of modern military power? If you were sitting in the Oval Office, would you have authorized the capture of a sitting head of state under these conditions? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to go deeper into the digital fog created by the Growlers and the sheer force projection of the USS Gerald R. Ford, check the links in the description. Stay sharp, watch the skies, and carry on.